thanks everybody for being here. Really excited about this panel. This is an idea that I've had starting basically when we heard it last summer about ITC going away, and having a conversation about if people are primarily installing on rooftops, or people are that's primarily their business model, if there's a way for them to start shifting off that or start diversifying the amount of offerings that they do have available to them. So here today we have a really great panel, the three of them here. First I'll introduce myself. My name is Ben Belke. I'm the Clean Technology and Programs Manager at Renew Wisconsin, focused on all things distributed energy resources. So that's anything from EVs, building electrification, but also C&I and residential rooftop issues that people have been having, interconnections, things like that. And as well as for the program side, that'd be like Madison, Solar for Good, some of the programs that you might have heard about today. I'll kick it off to you guys to introduce yourselves, but I do have a question to kind of lead into that. So we'll start at the end, we'll work down this way, but start off, if you could briefly share who you are, the company you work for, and the offerings that your company has, and one way that you guys have shifted in, say, the last year or two, or if you've had any changes in a company recently. So.
Thank you. I'm Frank Crandall. I'm the CNI sales manager for Enphase Energy for our central region. So I mean, my role is focused kind of to be a main point of contact for installers in the Midwest. From a CNI perspective, Enphase is a manufacturing company, so I'm going to be coming from that angle a little bit. We manufacture inverters, batteries, EV chargers, a number of products in the renewable space. And, we're just ever shifting in the industry as you have to be. But I would say in the last year, we've released new products in the commercial space, and we're really ramping that side up and excited to share more with you guys.
I'm Abby Haas. I am the heat pump department coordinator at Ethos Green Power in Viroqua, Wisconsin. In the last couple years, our service offerings. We have been a solar installer for 13 years now. About 2.5 years ago, we diversified into installing mini-split heat pumps as well, but we also do batteries and EV chargers and other electrical work. Like I mentioned, the mini-split side is the more recent development, and so I'll be talking about that more today.
And I'm Ryan Leto. I am the owner of Home Team Energy. It's a residential, primarily roof mount solar contractor. We're based in Brookfield, service about an hour from the Milwaukee metro area. I guess the reason I'm invited here is to talk about batteries. And so, interestingly, I almost try to talk people out of batteries most of the time. And we'll get into it more, I'm sure. But I'll save that. But anyway, I found that over the last 2 years, about 25 to 30% of my customers overall, we do about 100 projects a year, and about 25 to 30% of those wanted batteries as part of their installation, as much as I'm trying to talk them out of it for various reasons. So I kind of stumbled into it. I didn't actively pursue this as an add-on, but it's great for business, and I think it's a fun add-on to be working on.
And another thing that I think is interesting about your company as well is, and we literally just talked about it before the panel, is how big your company is. Do you want to go into about how many people you have and a little bit about why you right-sized it that way?
Yeah. So when I started the company, I was at a bigger company, and the other company before I left and then started this one was just kind of growth minded. So it was just grow. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but I didn't see the level of service for those homeowners that I think they deserved when they're investing, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And so I left because I just wanted to maintain a really, really high level of quality for the customers. And so I am intimately involved in every project, probably more so than I should be, or my crews would want me to be. But yeah, I've got one crew. It fluctuates between 3 and 4 people on that crew. We stick together. We do about 100 projects a year. And yeah, I love what I do, and I love talking solar with homeowners. It's really fun.
Awesome. Yeah, and then opening it up to the whole panel, across your different pathways, how can you see companies layer new offerings of existing solar if they are starting to look at ways that they can, again, expand beyond the rooftop, but what are some of the first steps that you see companies take?
I think I have a bit of the easiest time answering this one just because with commercial solar, it's not a totally new thing. It's more scaling up and looking at a slightly different customer base. So in terms of kind of, there's not really a need to reinvent everything. It's more about learning how to scale up and serve a slightly different customer type. I would say, and I think from a practical perspective, then there needs to be training and just education on what are the products that are, how do products differ, how does the technology differ, how does installation differ, et cetera.
Yeah, I guess to jump off of that, when we were deciding as a company what was our next move, there was a couple things that informed that, and one was, what are our customers' needs? So as we're sitting down looking at utility bills with customers, seeing that high spike in usage in the winter or the summer due to their heating or cooling, it seemed like that would be an opportunity to decrease their electric usage if we could provide a more efficient form of heating and cooling. The other thing for us was that we were looking for winter work for our crews so that we could keep our crews going year round. And so looking at what skill sets we already had within the company that we could utilize in a different way. And so we already had electricians who were really talented. We already had a talented mechanical install crew. How can we use those skills to provide a need that we're seeing for our customers?
And on the battery front, like I kind of already alluded to, we did not actively pursue this pathway. We just kind of met customer demand. As far as adding on, I think a lot, as much as we try to educate homeowners that a standard grid-tied solar system is not going to work when the grid goes down, they just don't hear that. And so they get solar installed, they love it, they love their lower electric bills, but that first grid outage happens, and they're like, what is going on? I'm like, all right, we already talked about this, let's go through the contract. It doesn't work that way. And so that's when they're starting to look for batteries, when they just want backup power when the grid starts going down more and more.
Yeah. And then Frank, from your perspective, working in the C&I side, how you had companies that have reached out to you thinking about potentially, starting to offer C&I products? If so, what are some of the conversations that you first have with them about if they're interested in transitioning into C&I work? C&I being commercial and industrial as well.
Great question, Ben. I think, all of us in the solar industry have learned along the way that there's just so many things to learn, and you just keep learning. Every year there's a new challenge, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that in the commercial space, as in the residential space, there's just things that we need to be aware of. And I think it's understanding, like we lost the tax credit for residential. Well, that's still going to be going on for a couple of years in commercial. We have opportunities to safe harbor for projects and keep them going for, they don't have to be installed for another 4 years if it's safe harbored before July 4. There's just some different nuggets of knowledge that, we should start as a baseline of what are the parameters and the incentives that we can use to be effective in commercial solar. So I think getting a baseline of that knowledge is very important because it's going to help them sell and provide the best value to their new customer base.
Yeah. And Abby, you already kind of alluded to you guys starting to have that conversation internally at Ethos about, you guys had an established solar company. You guys have been working in that region for quite a long time. Then you started adding heat pumps. Can you go through again kind of what was those first internal conversations? Were people hesitant in the company? Were people ready to go with the idea? And maybe kind of where the idea started potentially inside Ethos for heat pumps?
I wasn't actually at the table when the conversation was happening, that I was brought in once the decision had already been made. But like I shared that some of the concerns were, how do we keep crews busy year round? And so thinking that another service offering, also looking for resiliency in the company for exactly times like this when the tax credit goes away. Now we have another stream of revenue that we can rely on. So resiliency through diversification. We also had some foresight by one of our owners that they saw that the IRA rebates were going to be coming down the line, and so wanted to position ourselves so that we were ready to take advantage of those programs that were going to be available to our customers. So that was really a key part of trying to figure out how will this be viable? Will we be able to find customers? So that it felt more comfortable making that leap. And then I was selected from our project managers as the one who's going to spearhead that with zero HVAC previous knowledge or anything. And so I would say I felt very hesitant. I was like, you want me to do this? And here we are 2 years later, and it is running, and it's successful, and it has been a great decision for the company.
Yeah, and kind of jumping down in the conversation, but alluding to that you had limited experience in HVAC. What did that training look like? You know, obviously in solar we have NAPCEP training, we have training that exists, and probably some that you guys are used to having. But for heat pumps, what did that look like as starting to train for that?
It was a little difficult to find official training. I did a few trainings on Slipstream that were really helpful as setting a foundation of what is a heat pump. Here's a couple design considerations. But that has been one of the main challenges, is that because we are only doing ductless mini splits and we're not a broad HVAC contractor, finding education that is specific to just that service offering and not part of a 6-month course where you're learning about ductwork and sizing those. So it has been tricky. And I'd say our crew members have watched many YouTube videos. But I'd say the key to our success was picking a good distributor who had trainings that we've been able to attend. They aren't necessarily hands-on, but it gives you the foundation for the installs. Mm-hmm. But it's been a lot of hands-on learning, trial and error. And so that has been a really difficult aspect, is finding proper training, especially because even though heat pumps have been around for a long time, it feels like it's just gaining momentum at this point. Yeah. So there's not just a blatant training for it.
And another follow-up to the heat pump conversation too is, did you see that there were a lot of follow-up customers, or are they new customers into the heat? Like they're just interested in a mini split heat pump for their garage or for their office space or something like that?
We have been able to reach back out to our existing solar customers and remarket to them and say that we have this new product offering. It pairs well with solar. So we have had a few of those customers. We were slow to spread the message that we were installing mini splits so that we could take our time learning what we were doing, get it under our belts. The bulk of our customers in the first year came through working with our CAP organization, Cooley Cap, and that was tremendous. And so that's more where we found our customers right off the bat versus our solar customers. Now that we've been doing it for a couple years, we are starting to have our sales team market for solar plus heat pumps and have another service offering we can offer our customers.
Yeah, and then for Ryan, it sounds like you guys also had a similar, in terms of batteries, of not necessarily having it as an initial offering that you had, but an offering that was through people wanting to see it or wanting it in part of their system. So for you guys, what did the training look like?
So we install a lot of Enphase batteries. We like them, and then the Tesla Powerwall 3 are two go-tos. And both Enphase and Tesla have phenomenal training, online training. So Enphase University spent a lot of hours going through, watching videos and taking tests. I will say one of the challenges that I have specifically with, I don't know if it's specifically with Enphase, but they wanted every installer to go through this certification process, which is like, I think I spent 24 hours worth of online training to become certified. And I struggle to have my installers do the same thing. It's just a big commitment. And so I found myself on site more often than not, and almost training them on site with me. So I don't know if that's officially Enphase approved. Don't tell on me, Frank, please. But that's the way we did it. And again, Tesla's the same way. They want all the certifications to go through their online platform and training and testing. So.
Yeah, and then I guess for each one of you, I think it'd be interesting to hear about what are some of the initial things that you saw from making the transition, and additionally with people making the transition to CNI. Is it longer sales cycles? Is it different conversations you have to prepare for in the sales side? Is it different conversations with the homeowners that you wouldn't necessarily have with solar or with battery? So I don't know who wants to take that one on first, but I'm kind of curious about what does the difference internally look like as you take on these new technologies?
I think solar, from my perspective, it's been around for a long time. It works, it's consistent, it's reliable. There's not a lot of failure points to solar. And so that's an easy sale to me. It's easy to calculate the value, the benefit, all of that. Batteries are less so. I think that there are still developments that need to happen within batteries to make them more reliable. I think a lot of my customers have the misconception that batteries add financial value to the system, where it doesn't. In at least my market in the Milwaukee area, there's no financial benefit to it because of net metering. So I'm educating customers on that, and that's part of me trying to talk people out of it, where they think that they're going to save more money with batteries, and that's just not the case. Maintenance, same thing. I tell them, as much as we want this to be a maintenance-free type of system like solar, it just historically hasn't been. It's getting better, but there are times where I'll go on site and have to troubleshoot for hours and hours on the phone with Enphase or Tesla or whatever it is. And for a while, I wasn't charging for that. It was just kind of under the warranty. But eventually, I learned that I can't be doing that. And so that's just part of my sales conversation. If you want batteries, know that it's an investment on the front end, and also it could be over time as well.
Yeah.
I think internally we had to develop a lot of different processes to make this work and figure this out. And so that's how to talk to customers about ductless versus ducted, what we can and can't do, what information to grab. But then it is very different from solar in that both for me as a site assessor as well as our crew, that you are working in people's homes, and so it feels a little bit more invasive than solar, where like if you're doing ground mount or a roof mount, you're outside people's homes. Yes, the electrician has to come into your utility room, but we really go through every room. You are in their home and in their space for long periods of time, and so that wasn't something that I had considered ahead of going into this, but it's been an interesting dynamic, and the crews feel more or less comfortable in those situations. So that's just been a interesting thing that I hadn't really thought of beforehand.
I would add that, well, that's loud.
Yeah, they're hot. They're hot. Yeah.
Yeah. On the CNI side, I think there needs to be an understanding that the sales cycle does take longer. Of course, there's always the occasional job that comes through quick, and who doesn't like that, of course. But at the same time, the sales cycle in general is going to take longer. What takes days and weeks on the resi side will likely take months on the commercial side. On the other hand, you could do a handful of commercial systems, and that could be the same amount of revenue as 100 resi systems. So I mean, there's pros and cons, of course, to that, and there's pros and cons to the fact that on the O&M side, on the operations maintenance side, you're dealing with a handful of sites versus potentially hundreds of sites. So there's just the system sizes are going to be bigger.
Yeah.
The sales cycle is going to take longer. I think that's definitely a big piece to it.
I also want to add that with the heat pump installations, that timeline is much quicker than with solar. That from sign date to install, it can be a couple weeks, and it only takes a day for install. You're not waiting for an ICA or anything like that. So that pipeline moves a lot more quickly, which can be really challenging. I'm currently our project manager, moving all these jobs through, and it is very challenging to keep up with our crew. They're like, what's next? What's next?
Yeah.
Which is great because you aren't waiting for permits and ICAs to come through, but it's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
I have a question for you, Abby. I don't know much about heat pumps, so what's a typical residential, cost of a heat pump system that you're seeing?
So it depends on the needs, but I'd say that we're often installing probably a 2 to 3 zone system, and that costs maybe $10,000 to $14,000. And like I mentioned, most of our customers have been using the IRA rebates, and so there's $8,000 towards that and $2,500 towards the electrical. So we are trying to get as close to that amount as possible, but that's kind of the range. Or maybe $7,000 for a single zone.
Do you usually see people in the heat pump side of people looking to get, they're replacing their furnace, or they're replacing their air conditioning, and then they do it then? Or do you see a mix of people just wanting to go to heat pumps now. I know certainly more so than ever. I've heard conversations about heat pumps. Even I was just in college not that long ago, and it was just kind of a topic of conversation. Slowly got brought up, and now in the industry, it's like a hot topic. Everybody's talking about heat pumps. It feels so.
I'd say that we come across less of, my furnace has gone out, I'm going to replace that, because we are only doing the ductless mini splits. And if people have furnaces, they often want to maintain the ductwork that they already have. So we are more coming in for people who have really high electric bills. So baseboard heaters is a no-brainer situation for a mini split. It is more cost effective than propane. Natural gas is about the same. But I'd say we're more retroactively adding these, suggesting that people maintain their existing form of heating. Or if people don't have any AC at all, these are great because they both heat and cool.
Yeah. And then Frank, for you, jumping back to C&I, I know Ryan kind of alluded to the training that's involved within solar installations. But a big part of that too is I remember when I was installing for Eagle Point Solar, from the trainings you were pulled off the roofs or you had to have training. Right now would probably be a good time when we would usually do trainings. But how does Enphase structure trainings with, let's say, somebody who's currently doing resi and wants to go to C&I? Is there I heard you mention Enphase University. That's the first time I've heard of that term. But do you have trainings that are available? Are they in person? Are they online? That type of structure for that.
That's a great question, Ben. If there's one thing I could brag about Enphase, and I could probably brag about a few things, but it would be our training. We really have that dialed in really well. We've got a great training team whose entire role is to create training content. We have a YouTube channel that's just focused on training. We've got training parts of our website, and we have Enphase University, what Ryan mentioned earlier, and this is a free certification program for installers to be certified in designing, installing, and we even have some sales ones selling Enphase products. And I think what this does, it's kind of a twofold thing. On one hand, it gives end customers confidence in your company. You get to say, hey, I'm Enphase certified. Like I know what I'm doing. I have a badge from Enphase, so to speak. And it also, and that kind of reflects on the other hand in confidence in being able to sell because you have that training down. I think to expand on your question a little bit, we also take it very seriously. I mean, just yesterday, I'm coming to this event and I was like, I need to make this worth it. We actually did a training at a local distributor and we had 20 installers show up and most of them were residential installers. So we did a whole training on our C&I product line. So we actively do road shows. And I think what's really exciting is we've got a white glove support team, which to make a long story very short, on your first commercial project or two, we can even provide in-person support.
Nice.
But at the very least, we could coordinate remote support and have a CNI Enphase project manager have eyes on the project and help you from beginning to end, including design reviews and all kinds of really cool support. So, so I think we do take training really seriously. We really want to help out from beginning to end of that transition.
And do you see people who are in the resi space now having a comfortable time switching over to C&I products? Are they very similar in installation? Obviously, I know the size and scale might be on a different, but is it a very simple potentially path that people can take for that?
I think that's a great question. I think on one hand, of course, it depends on the technology. So speaking for Enphase, we use microinverter technology. It's AC based. It's one-to-one, like one microinverter to each panel. It keeps things very simple. If you're trained in residential installation for Enphase, it's just scaling that up. It's the same thing. If you've installed a residential Enphase system, installing a commercial system is not going to be difficult for you. I think with other technologies, when you're dealing with high voltage DC, you have 1,000 volts on the roof. I think it may require a little bit more. And I always, obviously, we just talked about training. I always recommend training, whatever technology you're using. Training is vital, so that is always important. But I do think that it's more vital when you're dealing with 1,000 volts of DC. You want to be safe. So I think just from an Enphase perspective, I think if you've done a residential system, you're just scaling it up. It's pretty simple there. And then other than that, understanding there are going to be different products, of course, between single phase residential and usually commercial. There's 208 or 480 volt 3-phase products. So getting a baseline on that would be very important.
Right. And then Ryan, for your crew, obviously batteries, I'm sure was quite an undertaking, or potentially could be. I know you guys are very, very skilled at what you guys do, especially for batteries. What operational workflow changes became necessary to support that growth? Was there anything that you had to adjust with your workflow as being the owner and the accountant and the bookkeeper of your company as well? Was there any changes that you see internally with that shift?
I mean, not a lot. Maybe the one thing that comes to mind is just kind of that ongoing, that maintenance, the monitoring, customer service. I've got questions, it's not working the way I expect it to work, or how do I program it to, time of use, load case, or whatever it is, just stuff like that. So it was more, more internal type customer support type of stuff. I mean, we were pretty well equipped. The Tesla Powerwall, it's a 350-pound battery unit that you got to lug down to a basement. They do make a dolly. It's like a $2,000 dolly if you want to get that. We don't have it. We just have a regular, $100 dolly and some manpower that gets down there just fine. But stuff like that, or the right vehicle to transport. But I would imagine any solar contractor probably has the right vehicle to transport a battery anyway. So, I mean, it's a pretty easy transition if you're only solar into solar with storage. It's not a physically difficult thing. It's probably just more mentally challenging to understand all the requirements. And each battery system has little nuances. You got to plug in this wire before you turn that on or do this. Otherwise, you might fry a board. And then we've done that before. And so you learn the hard way, and cost you a few $100 to get new whatever. So I'm sure that's all in the training. And there's just so much training that I didn't pick up on it, and you learn the hard way. So follow the training and save yourself some money and headache.
And then what does, for each of you guys, for heat pumps, for C&I, for batteries, what does the warranty look like on those? What does the maintenance look like on that, if ever? Is there a difference for C&I, for example, of the warranty on some of the products? Does it extend potentially for longer life? Is it the same as what it would be for resi? For batteries, similar, and for heat pumps as well?
Great question. From an Enphase perspective, it's pretty much the same. So our microinverters for, over 10 years, we've had a 25-year warranty on our microinverter products. We carry that on to the C&I side of things. Our latest communication product, the Commercial Gateway Pro, we actually upped our warranty from 5 to 15 years. So there's been actually an improvement on that end. But as a whole, you're looking at the same long warranties you're used to from an Enphase residential system.
We install Fujitsu mini splits, and the standard warranty that comes with that is 7 years. We've now installed enough to be an elite contractor, which has extended warranty of 12 years, and then we have created our own company labor warranty to back that as well.
Do you guys have any repeat servicing that you guys have to do with heat pumps?
We're in the process of developing a maintenance program. Now that we actually have this many systems out, and here we are 2 years in, it's time that we go back and truly service. But right now we're pulling from our crew lead that when a service call comes in, we send him out and he takes a look. And there's great service support from the manufacturer and our distributor. So I feel well supported externally, even if it's kind of bare bones internally still as we figure it out.
And on the battery front, warranties, what I do like about the battery technology is that I think it's advancing and advancing quickly. So for example, Enphase, their Gen 2, Gen 3 product was a 10-year warranty. Now their Gen 4 product is a 15-year warranty. which is significant. And then Tesla, it's always been at their 10-year warranty. There's different parts of the warranty, of course, how many cycles you get out of that. But overall, I think the technology itself is getting better and better, which gives me as an installer a lot more confidence to actually go out and sell it. 2 years ago, I was really nervous about selling batteries. In fact, just kind of a horror story. We had put, I won't name the manufacturer. Actually, it happened with both, sorry. Both of them, but you put in a transfer switch, a gateway, whatever it happens to be, and I had a customer call me and say, hey, I've lost power, what's going on? And I spent all this money on batteries, and I checked the We Energy's outage map, and there is no outage in his area. So not only did he lose power to his house that should have been there in the first place, but effectively his gateway transfer switch just malfunctioned, and so he lost power from the utility and from his solar and batteries, and so that was an immediate service call to go out there and try to figure out how to get him power restored. Yeah, I don't want to scare anyone away, but these are the real conversations I'm having with people as part of, warranty. What does that look like? So for him, I didn't tell him that from the get-go that I would be charging, for that. So I didn't. And so new customers, they know if something like that fails, if it's not covered by the manufacturer warranty, I do have to charge for those services. So.
And how many batteries and then heat pumps have you guys? And this is a question that I didn't prepare you guys for. I'm just out of my own curiosity. How many batteries do you think you've installed so far in your crew size, and how many heat pumps do you think you're at right now?
I don't have the exact number, but I would say probably about 60 homes that we've built for also have batteries. We are seeing more now where they already have had solar and they're coming back to us, a couple years after asking to add batteries. It hasn't happened a lot yet. I think there's been 3 or 4 of those, but I do suspect that will continue to grow over time here. And I've marketed zero, no remarketing to past customers yet. So we'll see how 2026 ramps up here, and if it doesn't, then we'll be marketing batteries to past customers.
That's awesome. We've just hit 100 installs for the last calendar year, and so probably maybe 130 total that we've installed. Wow. But just hit that new mark. That was really exciting.
Nice. And then for Frank, looking at the companies that you do work with, are there some companies that you see, are there some things that the companies do that you think sets them apart on being able to set themselves up to be successful in the C&I space? Are there some things that you've picked up on potentially? Obviously, you're not the ones who's out there installing it, but are there some things where you're like, yeah, I wish more companies could, when they're talking to me, knew this about C&I?
Yeah, that's a great question. Hopefully I'm not skipping forward a little bit because I think you have a similar question, but I think it has to do with pace. I think just with any company that's growing or growing into a new space, having a steady but not too quick of a growth is honestly a good quality to see in a company. Yeah. So in addition to everything that we've already discussed in terms of getting a baseline of knowledge, getting training and whatnot, I think it's an understanding that I've seen companies do it, but these kinds of things don't happen overnight. At the same time, they're I want to be encouraging to say it's very doable, and I've seen several companies really succeed in this space, making this transition. But I think what I think I've seen several companies that have started kind of a transition to commercial, but they didn't abandon residential right away. I know there's a little bit of a different conversation happening this year because we lost the tax credit. But even so, I think I've seen I have a good installer partner. I won't say the name, but they started this transition a year ago, ahead of the times, I guess, a little bit. But I think what really helped them was as they started winning these bigger projects, 100, 200 kW, they also had some residential projects sprinkled in. So, they had a bad winter day. They're like, we can't get to the commercial building. We'll work on this residential site. We'll stay busy. So I guess if I had to sum it up, I think pacing would be a good term to use to answer your question.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to ask Abby that I was really interested in kind of understanding about heat pumps specifically is, have you been able to pull from your other crews, like the electricians? I know you mentioned that you guys obviously have high-skilled electricians, but were you able to pull them from solar projects, or is it primarily you're pulling them in off seasons, slow seasons? What does that look like of your internal workings with your solar installer side of you guys and the heat pump side of you guys?
Yeah, we repurposed one of our solar installers to become our heat pump crew lead. And that first year and a half, we didn't have enough heat pump jobs to have him solely be on heat pump. So it was really helpful that he also was cross-trained with solar, that we could send him out with our solar crew on days that there weren't heat pump jobs, pull him back for heat pump installs. And then we shared our electricians between our solar jobs and heat pump jobs. This past summer, we got to a point where we had so many solar jobs that that the electricians didn't have time for heat pumps, and so I had to actually subcontract out our electrical. But now that we're in the winter season and solar installs are slower, it's nice that we can now pull our electricians back, keep them busy full-time. And we are now cross-training additional solar installers into mini splits so that we have more possibilities of how to deploy our crew members to maximize efficiency.
Right. And then Ryan, I know brought you in here to talk about batteries, but I also think what's really interesting, especially in the space that we're going into potentially for residential, is right sizing of companies. Was there an intention behind keeping your company what I would say is smaller than what most solar companies are sitting at right now? Is there an intention behind that? Or was there something that where you're like, yeah, we are happy with the 100 projects that we do? Was there ever any internal conversations about maybe we could do 200, but then that's going to require X, Y, and Z? I'm just kind of curious about your thought process behind that.
Well, like I mentioned at the start, the intention of starting small was so that I could personally be involved in all of the projects and meet with the homeowners. I think that it's worked out well, especially in this environment where the tax credit has gone away for us. I feel really good about having one crew and keeping one crew busy with work. I don't think that's going to be an issue for us. I don't envy, the larger companies that have, multiple crews and looking for a significantly more number of projects than I have to. And so I don't, again, that wasn't intentional. You'll probably find that I'm just not a very intentional guy when it comes to my business. But I'm also very content and happy with where it's been. I mean, I'm in my 7th year and it's been wonderful. I love what I do. I'm sure you've all heard the adage of, if you're not growing, you're dying. I just disagree with that. I think we've built the right size business and it works for me personally, my family, and for my crew. I think they enjoy coming to work every day and doing what they do, and feeling a part of, it's not just a cog in a wheel for these guys. They're a part of what we're doing and developing who we are as a company, which is great. Right.
And then we kind of already alluded to pace and size and focus, but for batteries and then additionally for heat pumps, is there a certain intentionality about pace, the size that you're building to? Has there been a ramp up of projects? Is there an intention behind kind of the scale at which you're starting at and where you're hoping it goes to?
We decided to start small as we're figuring out what are we doing. This is totally new. We don't have the knowledge base within the company. And just this year, November, December, as tax credits are going away, we made the decision that we were going to try to double our heat pump sales as a way to make up for the loss of residential solar and the tax credit going away. So now is 2 years in is when we're finally truly ramping up and trying to see where we can grow this and put more intentionality, more cross-training across the company, and see where it takes us.
I have found, I guess my advice to anyone, if you're a solar installer only looking to get it into batteries, is pick one or two of the manufacturers, become an expert on that one or two of them before you try to meet the need of every desire of every homeowner, because there's a half dozen or a dozen different manufacturers out there. And they're all a little different. They're very similar in a lot of ways, but they're all a little bit different, all have a little nuance to it. And so I found personally that I can handle 2 manufacturers. And so if you want to grow beyond that, I would encourage having more people help on your team become experts in those specific manufacturers.
And then I have two more questions, and then we'll open up for Q&A quick before we're sitting about 5 minutes left. But two of the closing questions that I have for you guys is, what are some of the most common mistakes, or what are some learned lessons that you guys have had in this process? And then two kind of pairs with that of, as people are leaving this session, what's one thing or one guiding principle that you would give people in expanding beyond the rooftop?
I'll just go quick. I think I've answered both of those, so I'm not going
Yeah.
to reiterate any of that stuff.
Honestly, I'd like to build off Ryan's last point. I think, obviously, I'm coming from a manufacturer side of things, but at the same time, I do see companies that have, every Frankenstein type machine, like system under the sun, and then it's really difficult to have a crew of people trained on everything. It's very difficult for them all to be experts in all these different things, and then you have to deal with a bunch of different manufacturers. And so, I think getting a good knowledge of these are the different products, finding a really good balance of this is valuable, like this is worth the price, and it's got a good warranty. It's for the type of project, for the customer base, for my company. This is going, I could get the support I need. And also, it makes sense financially. There's a lot of things to consider. I certainly think that it's, the cheapest solution is not the best one in most cases.
Right.
And then I guess to your second question, I would just encourage you all to say, you're in the solar industry already. This isn't a totally new business. You're scaling. You're not reinventing the wheel here. So, yeah.
I'll second that of picking a good distributor to work with and choosing your product wisely, especially for mini splits. If we hadn't gone with this brand with the high efficiency ratings, we might not have been eligible for the rebates and incentives that are out there. That was very crucial to accessing those. They have to be a high enough tier product, and so not choosing the cheapest line out there, but really investing in that, forming those relationships with your distributors, because then you have them to lean on. When we did try out a different product lineup, that's when mistakes happened of like, oh, we weren't trained well enough, and it's just different enough that it didn't come together in the same way. So, yeah, those decisions really are crucial.
Yeah. Really quickly before I open up to everybody else, do you guys have any questions amongst each other? If not, that's fine. Awesome. I'll kick it out to you guys. And if you guys could potentially use the mic there. If not, that's fine. It's small enough room. If you have any questions.
I'll use the mic.
Yeah.
This is a question to Abby. You mentioned you are backing the 12-year warranty that the manufacturer offers on the mechanical system with also labor warranty. Is that right? Did I catch that?
Yeah, we don't match it, so we have a 3-year labor warranty with it in mind that if something went wrong with the way that we installed it, it would show up in those first 3 years.
Okay, understood. And so if the mechanical failure happens either within those 3 years or the following 3 years, you're going to bill the manufacturer for your labor. Is that right? If it's not like a workmanship issue?
Yeah, if it's
I was
not
just
a
impressed.
workmanship,
Yeah,
then the manufacturer would cover that labor.
Got it.
And we've only had one instance of a condenser failing, and they just replaced it for us, sent it back out. And so we're actually still working through it to see what the result is, but I believe they are going to reimburse us for that.
Right. This is year 2, so not many failures yet. Perfect.
Yeah, it's been great. Great question. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Yeah.
How are you guys preparing your customers for future changes in the market? Because obviously, is this a reaction to what the market has done, or are you guys looking towards the future to kind of help with these attachments when it comes to heat pumps and battery setups?
For batteries, I would say, again, probably comes across, but more as a reaction at this point. However, I'm well aware of, there's net metering in Wisconsin. It's typically a monthly true-up, so therefore the batteries just really aren't valuable from that perspective yet. But like anything, what we see happening on the coast, specifically in California with NEM3, I anticipate that will happen here in Wisconsin at some point. And so that means batteries will be pretty much a part of every system as we're seeing in California. So I think those conversations are going to start having to happen because, just numbers wise, if we were to attach a battery at the initial solar installation, it might be a $15,000, $20,000 add-on, depending on how big of a system they want. If we're adding a solar after the fact, you can probably plan on adding another $5,000 or $6,000 on top of that. And so it's a pretty significant price difference to add batteries after the fact of doing a solar installation. So haven't had those conversations quite yet, but definitely need to start as the net metering talks continue to evolve.
I don't really feel that heat pumps are like a reactionary type thing. It feels like a different conversation than solar in that everybody needs some form of heating in Wisconsin. Cooling is becoming more of a necessity, so it's a little bit of a different conversation than like, can you invest in solar and this will cover your utility? Here's what we're seeing in the market. It is, I think, a lot more of our conversations we're having with customers is how do we educate you on this technology and how efficient and awesome it is and why you would benefit. But it feels less of a question of like what's happening in the broader sphere of the market or things.
I think in general, with CNI solar, it's kind of yes and no. I mean, on one hand, commercial solar continues to grow year over year. We saw this growth years ago at Enphase, and we kind of got into the CNI space with a dedicated product 3-4 years ago, and so I think there's a big market out there for commercial solar, and it's continued to grow even beyond 27. Everyone's predicting growth on that end. And I say 27 because the tax credit's going to be gone even for commercial solar unless something changes at that point. But I mean, I think the answer is also yes, because there's going to be a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, especially residential installers, especially those that are already involved in the commercial space. Just about every single one of them I've talked to is increase the size of their commercial division, or at least given more resources to that. So I think yes and no on that question.
Awesome. We are at time right now. First off, please give a round of applause to our great panelists. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And what I'll say is there is going to be a really great last keynote. Ray Gu, who is the founder of Enphase, will be speaking. He's a really great visionary guy. Excited to have him. So that will be in the main ballroom, right across from where you guys registered. So if you guys want to hop over there, that'd be great. Thank you so much for joining this session. Really appreciate it.